Hi, and welcome to February's Science Experiments. This month, since Valentine's Day is coming up, I thought we'd do some candy science. We have two experiments. We are going to make a rainbow with Skittles and water, and we're also going to make some gummy worms dance. Most of these experiments you can do at home. Most of the ingredients you will have at home already. You just need to go out and buy some candy, which it's a win-win, right? So, we have gummy worms, we have Skittles, and in order to prepare, you are going to need white vinegar and a plate and cups of water. Oh, and baking soda. So, in order to get prepared for the dancing gummy worms, what you need to do is you need to put 3 tablespoons of baking soda in a cup of warm water. Then what you need to do is actually, oddly enough, cut the gummy worms. So the gummy worms need to be light in order to dance. So I use a pair of scissors. If you are going to use a knife, make sure you either use a wet knife or put some baking soda on your knife so that the gummy worm doesn't stick to your knife. But I thought the scissors worked quite well. It just depends on how much you like your scissors. So, in order to prepare for the dancing gummy worms, you're going to need to cut your gummy worms long ways, and then long ways again, so you have a long, thin, skinny, that's a thin and skinny. You need a skinny strip of gummy worm, and if you really want it to work, you can also cut that again so that you have 1 worm in 8 pieces. Then you're going to put those skinny pieces in the cup of water with 3 tablespoons of baking soda and 1 cup of water, and let that soak for about 10 to 15 minutes. But first we are going to do our Skittles Rainbow while we get set for the dancing worms. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so our first experiment is making a rainbow with Skittles. Now you can see that I already have them set up in rainbow order as much as you can. Skittles don't have blue, but what if I wanted to fill this whole plate with a rainbow? We do this by adding water. So I'm just going to carefully add water to this so that the Skittles don't move around, they stay in place, but the water is touching all the candy. Okay, so while this gets started, I'm going to talk to you about what's going to be happening, and it's already happening. The sugar and the food dye in the Skittles are dissolving into the water, and when something dissolves into water, it becomes a part of that liquid. So the water is taking the sugar and the dye from the candies and incorporating it into itself. As you can see, that all the colors aren't mixing together. If you mix all these colors together, you get kind of a ugly brown color, but they're not mixing. They're staying in one spot as they fill the space. That movement is called diffusion. So what's happening is the sugar and dye are dissolving into the water, and they are spreading through the water with diffusion. It's interesting to see that some of the sides are going faster than others. Like you can see, this side is going much faster than this side. I can't exactly tell you why. This is a good experiment to try out in many different ways to see if you can figure out why one side is moving faster than another, or if you do it the same, is it going to come out exactly the same, or does it come out different, and why? This is a really easy, fast experiment that you can do at home to make a rainbow. All right, now that the colors have nowhere else to go, there's no more clean water for it to go, you can see they are starting to mix together. especially in the middle here. They're starting to mix together and get brown. Alright, so we have added our gummy worms to the pot. And they are wiggling around a little bit. Can you see them in there? What's happening is the baking soda and the vinegar are forming bubbles. And since those bubbles are coming off the gummy worms themselves are moving around because the bubbles are moving them around as they rise to the surface. It seems like the ones that like to dance around the most are the clear ones, unfortunately. So it's a little bit harder to see. But you can see how our gummy worms are having a good time in there. Yep. Okay. That red one on the right seems to be going for it too. Here comes our friend Mr. Green. All right. So it seems like in this experiment, sometimes you have to wait a little and then it'll work. And I promise you, they're not floating because they are going to float in water. Normally they would not be floating, they would be sinking. And the reason for floating or moving is all those little bubbles you see around it. And all those little bubbles are a reaction between an acid and a base. In this case, the acid being our vinegar and the base being baking soda. All right, so now that we've seen our dancing gummy bears, we will be right back to see how our gummy worm has grown. So our last experiment is something interesting rather than an experiment, and it's a good teaching moment about science. I was looking up candy experiments to do, and one of them was a growing gummy bear. Now in this instance, they used a gummy bear. I used a gummy worm because that's what we had for the dancing gummy worm experiment. What was supposed to happen is I was supposed to put the gummy item in water, and it was supposed to grow. But that didn't happen. This worm on top is the one that I left alone, and this worm on the bottom is the one I put in the water. And rather than growing, it shrunk. So instead of an amazing growing gummy worm, we have an amazing shrinking gummy worm. It's hard to say exactly why that happened, whether it's because I was using a worm and not a bear, or because I'm using a different brand of candy than that person was using. Maybe there are some ingredients in the gummy bears that they use that are not in the gummy bears that I was using that cause that growing reaction. So it's always good to see that even when something doesn't go your way in a science experiment, there is something to learn from it. Scientists often learn more from the experiments that don't go right than the ones that do. So, even though we don't have an amazing growing gummy worm, we do have something to think about. We'll see you next month for more STEM experiments.